letters that we have been sending to the former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa were never answered. We have information that the military intelligence had links with this. Even now, the Tamil people, they don't say that they are Indian Tamils. They say they are Sri Lankan.
Sri Lankan.
So they want to make that distinction very clear.
Very much so, yes.
So our leaders, selfishly, in order to come to power or stay in power, they abuse this freedom that they got and they let the racers fight each other. So we have to ask the question, what happened to him? No investigations into the murders of so many people. And in that culture, the East attack.
The Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Cardinal Malcolm Ranjith. Your Eminence, it's a great honor and pleasure for me to be invited to your residence and to have this discussion with you. So a very warm welcome to this program.
Thank you, thank you.
So, start off, Your Eminence, you were born and bred in Polgahawela in Sri Lanka.
Well, that was on November 15th, 1947.
1947, so that was British Ceylon.
Yeah. So I was born that time, and then of course my parents were working in the railway. My father was a railway assistant station master at that time, and so I was born in a railway bungalow.
Right.
And afterwards I did my first years in St. Bernadette's nursery, Polgahawela.
Right.
And after that we shifted from there along the railway line with my family as little kids. Then when my other sisters were born subsequently,
right,
in other places in that route, up-country route basically. And I did my studies in Colombo because my mother is from Mutual.
Right.
So I lived there during the time of our scholastic studies. And after having completed the studies I studied at Lunupokuna Sinhala Mixed School and subsequently at the De La Salle Mahavidyalaya.
That's Kottayana?
Colombo,
yes.
Mutual. And after that, the idea of becoming a priest was in my mind for quite some time.
This is something I wanted to ask you, Your Eminence. So how did that come about?
That may be because I met as a young boy many priests who were very exemplary and committed and dedicated to the people. Especially I was very much impressed by a French missionary who was parish priest of that church, St. Andrew's Church, Lunupokuna, who was extremely loving and caring of the people, and that appealed to me a lot, that I should pursue that kind of life.
Service and the community and
community service and being close to the people. And so I entered the minor seminary in 1965, and after that I proceeded to the Kandy Seminary for the studies in philosophy and theology. After having completed studies in philosophy, the church decided to send us all out to get a world experience.
Yes.
So I was working for some time at the Caritas office in Colombo as a clerk. Subsequently, I joined St. Thomas's College Kotte, the staff, teaching staff, and I was there for about a year. And then after having told the Archbishop, Cardinal that I would like to continue for my priestly studies, he sent me to Rome. So I did my theology studies in the Urbano College in Rome and at the Urban University.
So there you had to learn Italian and of course Latin.
Latin and these languages that I use for philosophy and theology. Having finished my theology course, the Cardinal wanted me to continue higher studies, to do an MA in Scripture, Holy Scripture. So I proceeded to do that, and having completed that, I returned to Sri Lanka. And I was assistant parish priest of Pamunugama with residence in Kapungoda,
I see.
a small little fishing hamlet in the coastal area of north of Colombo. And after that, I was transferred to Kalutara. I became parish priest of Payagal and parish priest of Kalutara, and engaged in pastoral mission, working with the people and for the people. And after having done that, Rome appointed me as National Director of Pontifical Mission Societies for Sri Lanka, and that made me work at the international arena for the church. And after having completed 10 years of that responsibility, I was made Auxiliary Bishop of Colombo.
I see.
This same diocese where I am now, but I was auxiliary under Archbishop Nicholas Marcus Fernando. After a few years of that work, I was sent as the first bishop of the diocese of Ratnapura.
So that's the first establishment of a new diocese?
New diocese was established and I was given charge of that diocese. So I had to build it up from grassroots, from 0 point. And I worked there for about 6 years. And then subsequently, they transferred me to Rome.
I see. So that was from having established the diocese in Ratnapura.
Yeah.
So before the establishment of the diocese in Ratnapura, was Ratnapura administered through another diocese?
Yeah, it was part of Gaul diocese.
Or from the other side?
Yeah,
I
so
see.
since there were big distances to cover,
Yes.
because the Bishop of Gaul had to look after Rambukkana and Utuankanda and all that. That's quite
a very
on the
large
other
area.
end. Yeah. So they decided to divide it. And so they created the diocese of Sabaragamu. Actually, Ratnapura is Sabaragamu.
Yes, Sabaragamu province.
So including the districts of Ratnapura and Kegal.
So after that, you went to
So
Rome?
I worked there, and after that I went to Rome, and I was placed in charge of the funding of the mission churches. The mission churches means those churches where the Catholics are only a minority,
I see.
including Sri Lanka.
Including Sri Lanka.
So our job was to collect funds all over the world and distribute them
To the
for
missions.
use by the dioceses, by the bishops. And I was president of that at the international level.
I see. And there are many missions in the world.
Many missions. We have about 115 countries that were getting help from this central fund.
I see.
Others were contributing, like countries like Germany, France, Italy, Spain, United States.
Yeah.
They were contributors, and we were distributing that money to the missions.
Like the Ministry of Finance in a country.
Well, little bit, because it is much bigger
Much
in
bigger,
the church,
of
the
course.
finance portfolio.
Yes.
But I was handling this side of the issue, and after 2.5 years, by some chance, I became an apostolic nuncio. I was transferred to Indonesia.
Was it
To
East Timor?
Jakarta.
Jakarta.
Yeah, my base was in Jakarta, and I was apostolic nuncio, so representative of the Holy Father to the government of Indonesia.
I see.
So I worked there as ambassador for 2 years. During that time, only the tsunami occurred.
2004.
And so a lot of damage occurred in Indonesia, especially in North Sumatra, where nearly 250,000 people were killed. That time also in Sri Lanka, India, Thailand, some of these countries lost a lot of lives.
Number of casualties, high level.
So, and I had to coordinate aid and help for Indonesia to reconstruct the church part of it.
Through the church, yes.
Through the church. So I was very happy to be there that time because I was able to help these people and had cordial relationships with the Muslims who were the absolute majority.
Yeah, because Indonesia is the largest
Muslim
population
country
in the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
And after 2 years of that, the Holy Father asked me to come back again to Rome. So I was transferred to Rome, this time as secretary in charge of the liturgy worship part of the church.
Right.
So I did that for 4.5 years in Rome. And then the Holy Father called me and told me that Colombo was getting vacant and there was no one to go there to accept it, whether I would be able to accept that task. And so I said yes, because it's my own diocese, my own home country. And I was happy to go back. So I came here I took over the diocese in August 2009, just after the war. Yeah. So it's since then I have been Archbishop of Colombo.
So, being born in what I call British Ceylon, or what we call, our viewers would recognize as British Ceylon, in 1947. 48, Ceylon gained independence from the British. So you grew up in an independent Ceylon. In 1972, the country became Sri Lanka, and 2 constitutions later, we are the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka. From your viewpoint, your perspective, how have you seen the change both in political and social structures from the Ceylon
I
and the
must
Sri
say
Lanka you have known?
that 75 years of independence, unfortunately, due to continuous errors on the part of our leaders, Sri Lanka had gone into a very serious loss of self-identity, loss of awareness of what we would like Sri Lanka to become. And so the type of product that we have after 75 years of independence is a very sad and pathetic situation, I would say, because we and Singapore became independent almost simultaneously.
Yes.
And there was a vast difference between Sri Lanka and Singapore that time.
We were much
Sri Lanka was a much more progressed, democratic, and healthy country, beautiful country. And in the last 75 years, you can see how Singapore has progressed, not only economically, because progress is not economic only, but they have developed socially they have developed. They have developed as a nation with principles, with uprightness, with equality among people and so on. In Sri Lanka, which began like that at the very beginning, gradually destroyed itself through the foolish steps of our leaders. And gradually we broke up into pieces of territory and people, and confrontational and suspecting relationships between the racial components in Sri Lanka, and then deterioration into corruption, heavy corruption, and the lack of a rule of law in this country, where people who did wrong things were punished, and uprightness was preserved, honesty. All these things were completely broken off and damaged.
So that was
seriously.
A gradual decline.
We went backwards. They went forward and we went backwards because of our foolishness, foolish decisions of our political leaders who wanted only to be in power. So they grab power, or they want to get into power by using these divisions in order to create hate feelings and dominance feelings among the people, so that by populism you get into power by populism, by boosting populist programs instead of programs of true progress, social harmony, equality, integration of the different communities into each other, and development. This did not happen in Sri Lanka.
And that's where we are today.
Yeah. Now you see, the first thing that we began was this division between the Sinhalese and the Tamils. And it was the very most unfortunate step that was taken by a former Prime Minister to declare that Sinhala should be the only language of communication, which was a very stupid, short-sighted, an emotionally charged decision.
If I may interject there, Your Eminence, if you were the Prime Minister at that time, 1956, how would you have dealt with the language issue, from English to Sinhalese or Tamil, or what would there be any change?
You have to create a sense of belonging among the people. You see, this is my country, these are my people. Even now, the Tamil people, they don't say that they are Indian Tamils. They say they are Sri Lankan.
Sri Lankan.
So they want to make that distinction very clear.
Very much so, yes.
So they have their identity. You can't erase off identity in a society.
Absolutely.
Because if you even take a family, within the family, the 2-3 brothers don't think in the same way. Don't look at life in the same manner. So there are differences.
Yes.
And differences are beautiful.
And recognizing that is
And if you recognize it and if you bring them together somehow, then you can build up unity. And unity means prosperity. So, but our leaders selfishly, in order to come to power or stay in power, they abuse this freedom that they got and they let the races fight each other. And it became gradually deteriorated to such an extent that it became an open war. And the country was having a borderline, so-called no man's land, between the north and the south. So there hundreds and thousands of young people lost their life. These are young people who could have contributed for the development of our country, both in the Sinhalese, those who fought as soldiers, and those who died in bomb attacks here and there, and then also the cadres of the LTT or any other such groups, as well as the innocent civilians who were caught in the middle of this firefight. Lots of people were killed.
Absolutely.
These are resources for the development of a nation. But the leaders wanted to use all kinds of means to separate them, it was like a tug of war between political parties in order to gain popularity, in order to get the vote from the majority community. They were rousing up the majority community against the minority communities. So that kind of jealousy-based relationships were advocated by our political leaders, which caused ruin in this country.
Absolutely.
So that unity was completely lost and progress could not have been achieved that way. And how much of money would have been lost in investments on armaments, on military training, on all kinds of such things that happen, reconstruction, repairs, all that could have been avoided. With all that money that we lost in that silly war, we could have built up north, south, east, west, so much of resources were wasted because politicians didn't know how to unite people and govern their country.
Your Eminence, we all talk about, in most discussions, about Singapore versus Sri Lanka 50 years, 60 years, 70 years on. You mentioned you were obviously the representative of the church in Indonesia, in Jakarta, which is, as we said, the largest Muslim population in the world, the country, with a Christian minority. Now, Indonesia, I'm talking more on the economics here, have advanced or is advancing as a rapidly growing economy with a large Muslim population, minorities of Christians, I think Hindus as well in certain places, and an extreme minority of Buddhists as well in places like Bali and various places. How have they made that change to the weaknesses and the problems you just highlighted?
You see, when Indonesia became independent, it was the people who achieved independence for Indonesia from the Dutch,
Sukarno.
Sukarno and others, they devised what they call Panchasila,
Yes.
5 principles. And those 5 principles are like something like this, there should be recognized religions there. And everybody has a right to choose any of these religions and live in that. That was announced. And that they will use one language, and that is Bahasa Indonesia.
Bahasa Indonesia.
Right. That they will respect democratic rights of the people to elect their leaders. So like that, there were 5 principles. Basic principle, Panchasila. And that is the basis on which they began their state. So that prevented Islamism being propagated and the others being eliminated or cornered or anything like that.
So that's a moderate, chosen path.
Yeah, so that everybody integrates, everybody comes together and works for the common progress of all. So Indonesia is advancing very fast.
Absolutely,
today,
rapidly developing.
because it has human resources, it has natural resources, it has possibilities for integration also in the ASEAN area. So they progress. Instead, we are the people who have been talking about Sinhalese and Tamils and all these religions and this, that and everything, religious identity, this one, that one and so on, and getting at each other, and we, that was one of the worst things that could have happened to our country.
Your Eminence, we as a nation, we reached one of the lowest points with the Easter Sunday attacks in many places across the island, mainly in Colombo and so on. How did the rising upwards and getting on and back to normality and accountability, how has it taken place from the point of view of yourself as the Archbishop?
Well, the weakness of the machinery that ensures a true inquiry into what happened, and the desire to rectify the situation on the part of our political leaders has been lacking.
Is that across the spectrum, or is
on the matter of the Easter Sunday attack?
Yes.
Across the spectrum also, our uprightness as a nation has suffered due to political people messing up with the law. Interfering with the law and trying to control the law in the name of a constitution, right? The 3 pillars of our constitution are the judiciary, the legislative assembly, and the executive. That is the basis on which that new constitution was drafted in 1978. So each of these pillars is important to maintain their independence, but there is a modus vivendi and convivendi, where we accommodate each other and then try to find uprightness as part of our main principal strategies for development. You cannot have development when the people are at each other's throat, when there is lack of uprightness in society, and when the rule of law is not applied in the same way to everyone. The principle of equality. Those things are not there, then we can't develop. So, unfortunately, for a period of time in Sri Lanka, the rule of law was not being upheld. As a result, lots of murders and disappearances had happened already before the Easter attack, and no investigations whatsoever. The culture of impunity has been generated in the country, so that anybody, especially political leaders, think that they can do anything and escape. And the people from the underworld also think that they can do anything and escape.
Get away
because
with it.
The structures of investigation and rendering justice to that any particular issue are rendered weak by the politicians, interfering in everything. So many people who were, during the time of the war, who were made to disappear, in white vans in the south and in other places, right? No investigations whatsoever. Several murders, like the murder of Nasantha Vikramatunga, no proper investigation. The murder of Eknaligoda, because he's missing. And for so many years, a person will not live so many years hidden inside unless he comes out. So we have to presume that somebody did something to him, that he had been taken away by people of the law, and he disappeared. So we have to ask the question, what happened to him? No investigations. No investigations into the murders of so many people. And in that culture, the East attack. And no proper investigation. Investigations, commissions were appointed, committees were appointed, and they did their best. But even then, they were not supplied with the necessary authority and the necessary teeth to get through to the people responsible and question them. Some of these people were never questioned. So we want to ask, we have asked all the time, that there be a fair and independent investigation into what happened on that Easter Sunday. 274 people, they lost their precious lives. It's not a simple thing, right? So we still are struggling for justice and for the truth, for that matter.
So, do you think our system can create an independent and effective investigation, or how do you see that panning out?
We have to. Now, we have had 2 offers from 2 political groups. Samagi Jana Balawege, they even declared in Parliament and presented in Parliament their plan of action, if they are elected, that they will do this in order to investigate the Easter Sunday attacks. So that's one promise. Then the Jatika Jana Balawege, that is this JVP-headed NPP, they also presented their plan of action, future plan of action, to investigate this and then get the truth out. So, but others have not offered anything. They're mum and silent.
Right.
So, and letters that we have been sending to the former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa were never answered. And to the present President Ranil Wickremesinghe were never answered. Not even an acknowledgement was sent to us on these things, asking for certain investigations. Nothing. So they are just trying to bluff around, you see. So this we can't accept. We want, if they are sincere about what they want to do, they must tell us what their plan are. Now only at the last minute, they were having this Nilantha Jayawardena in his position right up to recent times, and only recently he was sent on compulsory leave. Though it is very clear that the Presidential Commission of Inquiry into the East attack has condemned this man as having come to know about this beforehand and having not done anything to take action to prevent that. So that's a case where the government at the last minute, maybe for electoral gain, is trying to show us a signal that they are interested in doing something about that, right? They have caught some Muslims and they have filed action against them. Now, some of these Muslims were people who have been part of the fanatic Muslim element.
The
extremist element that you are thinking of revolution, thinking of bloodshed, thinking of holy war and all, jihad and all that, these people. But they were not the direct motivators and movers of the East attack. There were others. We have information. Now, Channel 4 program very clearly stated that a certain minister in the Eastern province has had a hand in this. So that must be investigated. You understand?
I understand. So what you're saying, Your Eminence, is that the the street level people possibly have been identified on the basis of extremist views and activities, but the masterminds, the brains behind, and all of that is still far from being discovered.
True. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Though they have arrested some people and they say they are filing action, this action, I don't know, 23,000 charges or something like that per person. You can imagine that they have charged the Attorney General's Department has charged them in such a way that those cases will never go on.
I mean, as a lawyer, when somebody has 23,000 or even anything more than 20 charges, even for a prosecution, it will be extremely difficult to prove the vast majority of them.
So they have made sure that those people, that was only a drama, playing a drama, you see. But they are not going into the real people who are responsible. We have information that the military intelligence had links with this group. Those links must be investigated. Right? What are those links? Must be investigated. And then Channel 4 has revealed that interview with that man, right? They have revealed very close connections between this group and a certain minister in the eastern province.
May I again interject, Your Eminence? Channel 4, the news and the TV channel from a Sri Lankan government of number of presidents, is considered sort of anti-Sri Lankan. Do you share that view? Or
I don't share that view.
Right.
Because here, anti-Sri Lankan attitude they may have taken it as a general political view. But here there are X, Y and Z persons being mentioned there.
Right.
So those people must be investigated.
I understand.
That's what we have been asking. So, without such investigations and a desire to get at the truth behind this attack, all this trying to fly kites, and trying to divert attention with all kinds of strategies, that won't work with us. We are not going to be fooled by anybody that way. We want a transparent, independent, non-interfered investigation into this, where we want to find out why all these things happen. For example, that man Jamil, the seventh bomber,
I see.
Right? He did not blast his bomb at the Taj Hotel.
Yeah.
We have to investigate why.
Yes.
Right? And then he is supposed to have received a telephone call. And the Channel 4 interview told who gave the telephone call. Now that must be investigated. Right? Even if that person has said, I didn't give that telephone call, that must be investigated. Just his word will not do. You have to investigate that. Then, why was the military intelligence not arresting that man but following him for more than 7 hours, allowing him to blast himself? He should have been arrested if they knew about him and they went to see his wife at home. They knew about him. They could have arrested him and questioned him, and then he would have been forced to come out with the truth.
The truth.
Why, what he was trying to do. They didn't do anything. They allowed him to blast himself. So we are very, very suspicious about the whole thing. You see, so why no investigation? And sometimes there are these things where the military intelligence prevented even the commission from investigating certain aspects. No?
Is that because of state security reasons?
Yes, state security. State security is correct. But then state security doesn't mean that you murder people. The state doesn't have the authority, even for security reasons, to murder people. The law is the law. If you hurt somebody, if you murder somebody, then you are responsible.
Has to take
you
effect.
Can't hide behind state security. So this is a case where 274 people were murdered in cold blood. So that must be investigated. If these people are serious about their responsibilities as leaders of the state.
I sincerely hope there'll be light at the end of the tunnel.
We all hope and we are praying and we know that our people must vote, must cast their vote, our Catholics especially, on what these people are doing or have done or have not done. Not on the basis of all kinds of golden promises being made. On the basis of what they are going to do and what they are promising to do or what they have done so far.
And from the point of view of the Catholic Church in Sri Lanka, how do you see the identity of a Sri Lankan or a Sri Lankan identity coming up, blossoming?
It has to come. It has to come because we have to give up this very narrow-minded, racial, religious compartmentalization of Sri Lanka. We must give up all these things. We must unite with each other. And we must respect the history and the culture of this country. There's nothing wrong in respecting, accepting, and even encouraging the Buddhist moral background of our nation. Because that is the heritage that we have inherited.
Yeah.
And many of us, even we Christians, in our very day-to-day relationships with others, we practice some of those very good moral and spiritual foundations that we have got from our background.
I mean, you mentioned Panchashila in Indonesia, a Muslim
yeah.
country.
So we must have another Panchashila here.
Yeah.
You see, where we respect each other, we accept each other, and we learn to live within the umbrella of the major communities together without trying to think about only our own group. You see? Otherwise, we can't build up a Sri Lanka, a new Sri Lanka.
Let's hope we can all, as Sri Lankans, build a new Sri Lanka, a prosperous Sri Lanka. Your Eminence, thank you so much for taking the time and effort to give us this interview by inviting us to your residence in Colombo. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much for interviewing us. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.